Welcome to the Red Wheels Panda Mixtapes and Mopeds podcast. Three of us lifelong friends coming together to share stories, have fun with the world of sports, music, movies, sharing stories, have fun, and experience unforgettable experience of growing up in the Midwest during the 80s and the 90s. We're going to start talking today about sports and coming into the Final Four. We want to talk about things of music and the time of the 80s. We want to talk about things that are fun, entertaining, and make you laugh. Grab your Walkman, jump on your moped, get ready to get on a trip down memory lane with Mixtapes and Mopeds podcasts. All right, so let's jump in here. The first thing, this week has been a fantastic week as of right now. We've got Final Four week. Connecticut, the powerhouse. Purdue with the player of the year. Alabama with the run and gun offense. And the darlings of the tournament, NC State, with the man Big Burns coming in that everybody's watching. But let's go back to the 1980s. Andy, let's go back to 1983 with another NC State team.
All right. I'm Andy. Some people call me Panda. That was Steve. We often call him Wheels. Yes. And then the other guy, Tyler, Red. You can kind of tell he has red hair still.
I thought we were going to call him White. I mean, his hair is really close to the white side. I picked red, but man.
So as Wheels said, NC State. So I watched that game over the weekend. I caught the first part of it and the back half of it. And I thought it was super interesting. The very first out of the gate, that big guy, Burns, from NC State. Now, that guy has been all over. The thing about that NC State team is I think every starter transferred from another school. And so I think that's kind of the new wave that we're seeing. But that big guy, man, he's like 6'9". I don't know how. Is he like 280 or some large
50, 500,
whatever.
It came out today that the pros from football are scouting him and are going to pay him to show up to the combine.
My Pittsburgh Steelers need an offensive tackle bad.
Yeah.
I'm all over the Steelers page, and they're legit interested in him. How can you not be?
I mean, those feet at that, but he has nice touch. He came out and he was popping 14-footers and hitting nothing but net. So I was like, okay, this could be interesting. And then, man, they just didn't go away. And, you know, the thing about that, they hadn't actually made a Final Four since 83. And I know that was kind of in our heyday and kind of in our sweet spot here for our podcast. And I remember watching that game as a youngster, and, you know, it was their
holy crap. I mean, don't you have goosebumps? We watch those tournaments, and watching the end of that game, and watching the head coach Jimmy V run around the court going, somebody give me a hug. Somebody give me a hug. I want to hug somebody, and there's nobody for him to go hug.
He's in a suit and tie, but his shirt's untucked and the tie's ripped off.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that was, and I was not a big Jimmy V fan at the time, but that team thing kind of grabbed us because they were going up against the Phi Slamma Jamma. That team was loaded. They were blowing teams out.
Did you see that final score? 55-53.
Yeah, it was
55 to 53. Tyler, how many 3 points do you think were taken in that game?
None. I mean, were they even shooting the 3-pointer?
No.
That's why I asked. That was the trick question.
Yeah.
No.
You're trying to pull
1987. Yeah, not
87 was when they started the 3-pointer?
Yeah, 87 was the first time they started the 3-pointer.
Well, how about the women's game this weekend where the 3-pointer was different on one side of the floor than the other? Did you see? Not the interlude here, but holy shit. Are you kidding me? Hey, you're going to shoot your three-pointers from 9 inches further back than we are. Whoops, we still won.
How about with the NCAA say, hey, Portland, I don't think we'll be back for about 25 years. God bless. Or how could you not be sitting at half court going, I think that looks a little different over there.
It
What?
made me think of the old Snickers ad to the Chiefs and the chefs. Great googly
I was going to
moogly.
say the same thing. Oh, great googly moogly. Just take a bite of your Snickers. Maybe nobody will notice.
Woo.
Oh God.
But that was that was kind of like the golden era of like college basketball dynasties because that the Phi Slamma Jamma came right on the heels of Jordan's teams, the UNC team. They went back.
81, 82, yeah.
Yeah, they went back. Jordan made that shot when he was a freshman. Was
Who'd they beat? Georgetown?
They beat Georgetown? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Was
then
that when Patrick Ewing was there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think so because Georgetown went to 3 title games in 4 years during that kind of same.
Eric Sleepy Floyd.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is a yes.
You know, that's the beauty. This time of year, March Madness, there is one team every year that America gravitates to, and you're right. I mean, this for the first time in 40 years, it's NC State this year, and it's because there aren't that. I mean, until just a couple days ago, you had all the 1s and 2s still in the game. The only big upsets early rounds were Oakland knocking off Kentucky and Auburn getting picked off. Other than that,
Kansas got picked off pretty early too.
Yeah, but this wasn't Kansas's year anyway. I didn't think so, but you had the. I mean, even Purdue got through, and it's been 3 or 4 years of Purdue losing in the early rounds, and here they are. But I don't feel like you guys tell me. I don't feel like America is pulling for Purdue. I don't. America is pulling for NC State. America is not pulling. They're not pulling for UConn either because they'd be a back-to-back champion. Nobody likes a back-to-back champion unless you live in Connecticut, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how the Burns kid, who's only 6'9", is going to go up against that cheat code at Purdue. Is he like 7'4", whatever he is? He doesn't even jump to dunk, that guy.
He doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I was looking, and this is like the most lopsided, at least from a betting standpoint, Final Four matchups that I can remember. Because I think UConn is over like 11-point favorite, and Purdue is like 8.5. Those are not really competitive predicted games.
That game in '83, Houston was favored by 7.5.
I was gonna say that. Give me NC. You both know I'm a gambler. Give me NC State and 8. My book right now is 8.5. Give me NC State and 8.5 all day. I'm not saying Purdue's going to lose the game. They're probably going to win. They're not going to run NC State out of the gym. They're just not.
It all depends on if the big guy fouls out trying to guard Edie. That comes down to if Edie.
Yeah,
he's not going to be able to shoot over him. He's going to try to block him out, which that might be the case too. He could really block him out pretty good. If they have that as that'll be fun to watch.
And kudos to Edie because I'm not a massive fan. And by the way, Purdue hadn't been to a Final Four since 1980, so it had even been longer for them than NC State, which shocked me that some of those good Purdue teams in the 80s and 90s didn't get back to the Final Four. But Edie last year, when they got knocked out first round, they were at 1, right? Got knocked out
first round, 16.
First round.
Same thing, Virginia. A couple years back, same deal they're going for right now.
Yeah, and so last year Edie had a hard time staying on the floor, and this, that last game, he was out 33 seconds of that game. He played the whole game end to end, and I don't think he was even in foul trouble. So I think kudos to that guy figuring out how to stay on the floor, because when he's on the floor, it is literally a cheat code for that team, and they know how to take advantage of it. And good for them. You got one of those, you better take advantage of it. I wish.
Right.
Yeah. My team.
We have to add one more basketball note in here, and that's the year we saw the Fab Five
Oh,
in North Carolina, and Jimmy Jackson and the Buckeyes playing in Rupp Arena in
Rupp
Kentucky.
Arena, Lexington, 92, spring of 92. What's
Uh,
that been?
Yep.
32 years ago.
Anybody that's not been to a basketball tournament game, now you get priced out of it. But I think our tickets back then were $32 each. Without
I
all
know
the
this.
crazy
I know
fees.
this. When we
Yeah.
drove up there, we didn't even consider what the price of a ticket was going to be. Our biggest concern was gas money and beer money
And a hotel
yeah,
room.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we didn't even think about buying a ticket to the game until we got up there, right?
I hate to ask, was that the year we had 3 gallons of beer in the car?
I don't remember that.
3
Yeah, we can
gallons.
cut this. Was
I
that a
remember-
Greg Bell? Was that a Greg Bell year where we had
That
3
was
gallons
great.
of?
Wasn't it? It was the 3 of us and Greg Bell, wasn't it?
It was.
I'm pretty sure. And we had 3 gallons of beer jugs in the car on the way going up there. And
Makes
Greg
sense.
Bell's going.
I mean, it was a
90 miles
4-hour
an hour.
drive. I mean, you need 3 gallons of beer for 4 hours, right? I mean,
Well, I remember
You
one
know,
of the most eventful things from that weekend is we didn't stay in Lexington. We went up to Cincinnati to spend
Right.
the night after that, and we went
and we
down.
saw Leitner's
Oh,
shot
my
in
gosh.
Cincinnati at the
and
at the bar.
right there on the river.
We're on one of those boats on the river. We were sitting there having dinner and drinks, and then that game was
Most iconic shot probably in college basketball history. And we were all together watching that in a bar you're right, in Newport. It was Newport. It was on the Newport, Kentucky side. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Golly, that was a fun time. Jesus, God Almighty.
That was, and then Chris Gent for the Buckeyes missed a shot from the baseline to win it, and they went in overtime and ended up losing.
To the Fab Five
Five
of
went on
Michigan.
to-
Yeah. You remember? Do you remember the either one of you remember the regional Final Four? Can you name those 4 teams? Because I can.
North Carolina, even for that region.
Yeah, for the region we saw it
Yeah,
at
it
Rupp
was-
Arena. It was regional finals. It was
It was
us.
North
It was
Carolina.
us.
North Carolina. Was it UCLA? Were they the 4th?
No, it was the Fab Five.
Yeah, I know.
It was at
Michigan,
North
Ohio
Carolina, Ohio State, and the 4th team,
No
Eddie
clue.
Eddie Sutton's Oklahoma State Cowboys.
No kidding.
That's
I
who
never remember that.
I go back and look it up. I don't have that in front of me right here, but that's who it was. Friday night, we watched those 2 games, and then Sunday, we watched the Ohio State, obviously Chris Gent and the Bucks and the Jimmy Jackson and go against the Fab Five.
One of the best Buckeyes ever. That guy had more hustle. Man, I love watching that guy.
Fab Five. As much as I hate Michigan, Fab Five was pretty freaking good.
They were
It's fun to watch.
They were
Fun.
freshmen.
Right.
Nobody does that. Like, look what happens to UK these days with all their freshmen that are all going to go pro and be NBA All-Stars, yet they go get knocked out by Oakland, right? You just
And then they lost their coach halfway through the year, didn't they? Or was that the next year? That was the Fisher coach. Did Steve Fisher coach that team? Didn't the Fab Five lose their coach like midway through the year? Maybe not their freshman year. It was the sophomore year.
Fisher?
So Steve Fisher, I thought it was Bill Frieder left, went to Arizona State, and Steve Fisher took over, and I thought he coached the Fab Five. Is that right?
Let's go look that one up.
Yeah, it was a big deal when Frieder left.
Edit.
Yeah.
Cut.
And we don't have to be right. We don't have to be right all the time.
We don't have to be right. We just have to be entertaining.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah, this weekend I think it's going to be a lot of fun with 2 kind of big, overwhelming favorites, and I think the whole country will be pulling for the underdogs. And we haven't talked about Alabama, but they've never been to a Final Four, and I watched that team.
That's hard to believe.
They didn't play a lick of defense for the first 3 months of their season. Not a lick. They could score with anybody. I saw the High State play them and just run them off the court back in November. And I'm like, wow, that's a talented team, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I think somewhere they got religion on defense because they're still not a great defensive team, but they're much tougher to score on, and their offense is still as good. So it'll be interesting to see that UConn team though as a borderline
Shameful plug on Alabama. Shameful plug. Mark Sears, Ohio University for 2 years, and took us to the big game. He wasn't around, but we didn't make the tournament, but he was really good for Ohio University.
Oh,
He had the other kid that went to the NBA. Those two were on the same team, I think.
I did not know he was a Bobcat.
Yeah, he's a Bobcat
right
first 2 years.
UConn's gonna roll anybody. I don't see how can you count them out of any game? They haven't even been in a close game.
No, nothing under 10 points. Yeah, I picked him in my pool, but I definitely want the underdogs to win. I think most of us do. So it should be an interesting weekend. All right, I think we've kind of covered off our sports topic for the week. So with that, we're going to move on to, I don't know if it's our second favorite topic, but maybe even our most favorite topic, music. And the Red Rocker is going to lead us into that. So
rock and roll. No, we were talking, me and the boys were talking about bands who we loved in the 80s and even 90s that are still relevant today. Not still together today, because for God's sakes, I mean, Kiss and Motley Crue are still trying to stumble through their third, fourth, and fifth farewell tours. But as pathetic as those are, there are still bands today that we were listening to in the 80s and 90s. The one that comes screaming to the forefront is U2, and we were talking about them playing that. They did that residency out at the new Sphere in Vegas, and what I wouldn't have given to been out there. I just couldn't afford it. I've got a daughter in college, and if she were not in college, I could have taken that $30,000 a year.
So wait a minute. Maybe the podcast is not paying off. The cash isn't rolling in from the podcast.
Hello, Spotify. But no, I mean, a band like U2, that when these boys are a couple years older than me, but when I was a sophomore at Ohio University in 1987, that Rattle and Hum album came out of U2's. It was a live album, but it had a lot of new music on it. That album changed my life. It changed and I'm a music guy, and it changed my listening habits. It changed the bands that I was listening to. I all of a sudden didn't care as much about the headbanging stuff that I had been listening to. I still love, don't get me wrong, Weasel and the AC/DC and the Def Leppard and Poison and stuff. But it single-handed, that was an album that was so impactful that it turned me into a different mindset. I started listening to REM and Billy Bragg, and the stuff with the.
What did you study to? What was the music you studied to? I hate to say that, but
Are you kidding me? I got out of OU in 4 years, the skin of my teeth and my daddy's checkbook. I mean, I didn't. Good Lord, I study.
Man, I was an engineer at OU. I had to study my behind off. Pink Floyd got me through OU. The wall is what I listened to study. That was my comfortably numb. That was how I could study.
Pink Floyd. That there's a band that had they not, gotten into the fight that they're in, Roger and David, they would still probably be making music. today. But U2 is, and U2 is still impactful today. That the bands that are they're few and far between. Think about that. I mean, that's been 40 years from the 80s, 90s to now. You got U2, you got Def Leppard, just came out with a great album a year and a half ago that Panda and I have been, playing on jukeboxes and bars for the last couple years on our Touch Tunes app. Kick, I mean that you talk about an album out of left field that it was so much better than it had to be at this point in their career. I mean, they're still on top of the world. They are. They are.
Gonna have a mega tour this summer. Jeez.
Did you ever see them? I saw them right in college. They were phenomenal. I saw them up the Cleveland Coliseum.
Yeah.
Def Leppard before the car wreck with the drummer.
Well, yeah, they were my first concert in 83 when I was at Stanberry.
Stanberry.
Yeah, I was 15 years old, so that was 1983. They had just come over. Pyromania was not even out yet, and they played the Ohio Center. Crocus opened. This is when Rick Allen still had his right arm from before the Corvette crash.
Porsche into a telephone pole.
Yeah, that doesn't fare too good. That was 40 years ago, and they're still bringing it, and they're still relative, and they're still making new music. I got so much respect for bands like that are still doing that after 40 years. I mean, because we see so many of them pathetically, and I used to love Kiss, don't get me wrong, but they are just embarrassing themselves at this point, trying to tour and trying to do another farewell tour and trying to mop up what's left of their cash cow legacy.
Come on, Tyler. Take me back to the 80s. You were a Violent Femmes fan, right? You loved the Femmes.
I did not like them in the 80s. I didn't know them in the 80s. Although a gal that I did, I'm not going to name her here on the cast, but my first serious girlfriend as a sophomore at Lancaster High School she loved that first Violent Femmes album. She did, so I had to listen to it. But
after day,
gone, Daddy, gone.
Daddy, gone.
Follow.
Yeah, that was a great album.
I mean, as good as they were great in the 80s, 90s. I saw them at the Newport at Ohio State.
Oh yeah.
Like in the late 90s, but they're not still relevant today. They're not even still together.
No.
Yeah,
I'm gonna jump in and say make a controversial claim because this is Tyler's favorite band, or at least one of his favorite bands, the Rolling Stones. So I was a kind of Rolling Stones hits fan for my whole life until COVID hit, and then I got into vinyl, and I had no vinyl albums, and now I've got like 520. I did that all within about a span of a year. It's part of that process.
And he's still married. Jill did.
And I'm still married. When you get like 15 albums delivered on a daily basis, that causes some problems. Yes. So but the Stones I was getting into their catalog, and Tyler was helping me, this album's better than that album and all that. And so it's almost like a new band for me, because I was listening to, Some Girls or Let It Bleed, end to end, and hearing songs that I didn't know. I'm like, holy cow, these albums are way deeper than the 2 songs or 3 songs that I know. And so I've really gotten it. In fact, Spotify tells you your top band that you play every year, gives you your list of top 5, and the Stones have been number 1 for the last 2 years for me on my Spotify. So that I've really gotten into it, and so that's not controversial. What I'm about to say is very controversial. They released an album last October called Hackney Diamonds. They released a single in the summer last year called Is Angry, and I really liked that. And then the album came out, and Charlie's dead and Bill's not around, So it's not the full like crew, although there's a couple songs that they played on that album. But since that album has come out, and my wife, who's not a Rolling Stones fan at all prior to all this, seriously plays that album at least once a week, and probably more like a couple of times a week. We are so like engrossed in that album.
The album? The whole album?
There's not a bad song on that album. And here's what I'm about to say. For me, not for purists like you or anybody else, but for me, that is one of their top 3 albums they've ever put out.
Wow.
Yes.
I have not heard one song on it.
I've heard Angry, and I've heard a couple other tracks, and Andy knows. I mean, he just said it. I mean, the Stones are probably my favorite, besides the Black Crowes, maybe Foo Fighters. I mean, the Stones are my favorite band of all
What's
time.
Your song? What song? Give me their favorite song, Tyler. Top 3.
Stones?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't. I mean, that's impossible. But it's easier to name albums. But what he's alluding to is that it goes to the point of bands still relevant today. How in the world are the Stones at 80? Mick Jagger's 80 years old. How are they? Not only are they still making music, but they're obviously still making music that Andy and his wife and Jill listen to on a daily basis. It's mind-boggling. The Beatles, who many consider to be the greatest band ever, made music for about 8 years, 10 years, maybe at the most. Now, I'm not discounting the Beatles at all. I love the freaking Beatles. But their run was 8 years, barely 8 years. Stones have been doing it our entire lifetime.
Yeah,
it's incredible, and I'm embarrassed. I need to go listen to spin Hackney Diamonds tomorrow over coffee.
They have one of my favorite stories. I'll tell it really quick. Andy heard this story before. I was out at the Biltmore Hotel in Arizona, and we were doing a conference out there. And the Biltmore, I mean, it is the primo, not 5-star, but 4.5, as high as you get. It's a luxurious resort out in Arizona. And at the time, 12 years ago, it was the Stones stopping point. So that was their central place. They were doing tour throughout North America, and so whenever they play a concert in Chicago, I'd fly over to Chicago and fly back to the Biltmore. So I didn't know that they were staying there, but I was talking to the manager of the place, just sitting around having a cocktail, and said, "Hey, dude, tell me your funniest story." He's like, "I'm not really allowed telling you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway because it's pretty freaking funny." He said, "The Stones are staying here right now. It's on their North American tour." He said, "We have to post the person from the hotel staff outside of Keith Richards' room because every night he orders 2 bottles of Jack Daniels. He drinks a bottle and a half. He comes out of the room butt naked and walks around the hotel." And we got to chase him back into the room without him getting arrested or any of the other people getting pissed off. That was 12 years ago. That's when he was 68.
I was going to say that was only 12 years ago. I was going to say that was 1974.
Oh my God! That's
down
crazy.
in a bottle and a half of vodka, Jack Daniels. And I went, he goes,
God love him.
I go, I don't want to know where they're at.
Keith will outlive all of us. He's petrified.
So Keith gets one song an album typically, at least that's what it seems like. And his song on Hackney Diamonds is as good as he's done in a long time. I really
because most of them are dreadful.
Yeah, this one it really is really, really good. I mean, obviously his voice is not like Mick's or whatever, but this particular song is he nailed it. So I'm taking Jill to the Stones when they come through Atlanta in June. She's never seen them, and so we're hopeful that we'll get quite a bit of that album. Although I'll be happy with whatever they play, but she's hoping that they'll at least play 4 or 5.
I'll throw
Hey
one
man,
more
Weasel,
out there.
I'll leave it with this before I give it to you, Weasel. Hey, tomorrow morning or tonight when we hang up here, you ask me a song. I'm gonna go deep for you. Go to Goat's Head Soup and fire up Star Star.
Wow. Okay.
Goat's Head Soup, Star Star. And you text me later on tonight and tell me if that's not a game changer. That's one that you'll never, even Stones fans are gonna kind of stare off into the distance. That is a great song. It'll get you jumping around the living room a little bit, and your wife will wonder how many glasses of wine you've had.
No, she won't.
There's no wonder and amazement about it. Go ahead, brother.
All right, boys. We've talked about music. We're going to go into our next segment, and we're going to talk about movies of the 80s. And we're going to have it's going to be the vote, or what we consider, I mean, there are so many good movies in the 80s. Interesting thing about it is what I saw is the budgets of those movies in the 80s and the box office, and and there happened to be a lot of the common directors, but I picked out three that had a little commonality, a lot of common actors. San Elmo's Fire, 1985, just a killer cast. The Breakfast Club, 1985, another killer cast. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off are the three to talk about. I mean, if you go look at them, we all go back to Ferris Bueller's and go, living in Lancaster High School and thinking about, we got away with so much crap. And you think about that day, I'm like, God bless. I remember how many times I used to talk to the girls at the admissions office and give me notes to leave the building and get out of school. And like, that guy led my life in high school. And then you go with St. Elmo's Fire, man, what a great just movie of all the cast of characters and little different stories between Emilio Estevez and the Rob Lowe. And I mean, it's just a great freaking story.
Ally Sheedy, I loved her.
Oh yeah.
She was in both Breakfast Club and there was actually a lot of overlap between those two movies.
Right? Yeah. And then the Breakfast. Hey, Tyler, did you ever serve detention ever in high school?
Not Saturday school. I honestly don't. Did you guys ever do Saturday school? I mean, that's what Breakfast Club is all about, right? Saturday school.
Yeah.
Saturday detention for a day. I never did. I mean, I did plenty of detention. Don't get me wrong, but I never did Saturday school. Did we do that at LHS?
I had one once that was assigned, and I had Kelly Hughes write me off that I attended the Saturday, whatever it was. I think it was Arden Reed that was running the detention. I was supposed to
Panda's basketball coach.
And Kelly Hughes wrote out he was there.
Only time I ever showed up at LHS on a Saturday morning was for the ACT test, and I'm proud that I just told my teenage daughters this. Proud to say I got an 18. They're like, Dad, I don't think you can do that. I said, yeah, I got an 18. They were bummed out when they got a 26.
I think you got a 12 for signing your name.
Yeah.
I really can relate to that, Tyler. I can relate. My English scores were horrendous. You think I couldn't write a sentence?
That's why we had OU.
All right, so we got to rank these bad boys. I am not really sure how I would rank them, but I can tell you that I love all three. To me, though, something about Ferris Bueller, it is just so different than any other movie from that time frame. It was just running at a different beat, and we could all relate to it, even though I wasn't like a Ferris Bueller type. but we all knew those types, and you two were probably pretty kind of familiar.
I'd say that was both Tyler and I. That's for darn sure.
Yeah. And so that was just, that to me is almost like the bar. And so to me, that has to be, at least for me, my number one. Breakfast Club was, was one of those, it was this cast of all these actors that are at that time were like the up and comers. And the guy that really.
Hey, by the way, Andy, Breakfast Club, $1 million budget for that movie.
Yeah.
When
that was one of John Hughes's first films.
$1 million budget.
Yeah. All you needed was
but they were all like that.
But I mean, they were in a school classroom. I mean, there was nothing. They just sat in a classroom for most of that whole movie. Right. $1 million budget. That movie, and it was just, and it was one, as kids, y'all related to. Everybody had a different story of stuff going on, right?
Well, those were all the same director. I mean, John Hughes directed
two of the three.
Club. John Hughes directed Ferris Bueller, 16 Candles, which was another great low-budget 80s film that did so well. And then when you go to like a St. Elmo's Fire, that was, I believe,
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher, yeah. That was more relationship movie, whereas, Ferris Bueller was corny humor, great, don't get me wrong, 16 Candles, slapstick, stupid, Long Duck Dong, that totally different than, and what was the other Hughes film that you talk about low budget, Risky Business. I mean, so those were
was John Hughes. That was Risky Business.
I think so. I'll have to look it up. That's off the top of the head, but I know Hughes did 16 Candles, Breakfast Club.
Did he do any John Candy movies? Was he in any of the Uncle Buck? Was that any of John?
Let's talk about Uncle Buck for a minute. We got an Uncle Buck. That's great. How's your plumbing? Been eating a lot of cheese lately. God, I love that. That was 89 because I was on spring break my senior year when I went and saw that movie. I love Uncle Buck.
Where'd you go for spring break?
Oh God, senior year how you talk about a story? This tells you where we came from. I mean, this day and age, our kids would never do this. But the only way I could afford to go on spring break as a senior with no money in my pocket and no prospect of getting money at any point, there was a bulletin board at the student union that had like recipe card, like index cards tacked up there with phone names and phone numbers and where they were going. In other words, it'd say like Bo Johnson, West Palm Beach, Florida bound, and here's my phone number. So to share a ride, right? And so I'm not kidding. I mean, so me and my best buddy, we didn't have any money, and so we went up there and we're like, we want to go to Fort Lauderdale for spring break because we've got a friend that lives down there, or his parents live down there, but we got to get there, right? I don't have a car that can get to Fort Lauderdale from Athens, Ohio, and so we literally pulled a index card off the student union billboard, bulletin board, and jumped in a car with a couple strangers that were just going the same way. We split gas and we split Arby's money, and we just got down there, and that's how we did it. I mean, my girls would never believe that today. Because if my girls did that today, they'd be cut up and left in pieces in Tennessee.
We did the same thing sophomore year. On the billboard, same thing. High University, it was $287. $287. That gave you a bus ride on what essentially was a Greyhound, but there was a lot of students that were on it. We sat on a Greyhound for 24 hours, rode on that Greyhound to Daytona Beach, and these folks put us up into 6 guys into one hotel room. So there's the 2 double beds and there's the couch where 2 guys shared the couch. And that was, everybody had that same sort of situation for $287. And the bonus kicker was, on the bus, they supplied it with kegs, which was not good. That was not a good idea. So by halfway through the trip, everybody is absolutely stinking hammered, in the middle of the night, going down to Florida.
On our next podcast, stay tuned, because we'll talk about when Andy Reese stowed away, robbed my dad's restaurant, and stowed away to Florida. Stay tuned for podcast 2.
You definitely want to come back to
teaser.
You definitely want to hear that story. Oh, God.
Hey, we want to thank everybody. I think we all kind of voted Ferris Bueller's Day Off as the best there, but we want to say, as we're closing out our first podcast out here, we want to thank that first listener for tuning in. Please go tell your friends. Go tell your friends. We promise we'll be try to be laughing the entire time, giving some stories like that coming along here. We'll be talking about sports, movies, music, and all kinds of other crazy stuff as we're going along. Don't forget, go listen to Red Wheels Panda, which is Mixtapes and Mopeds. Thank you, everybody.
Woohoo!
Pilot.